Hello, guys. David Vose here again. Wow, it's another beautiful day. I mean, it's still morning and it's almost 60 degrees out. I don't know how warm it's going to get today, but there's definitely something going on. And then there's flooding going on in Washington state and probably a lot of colder weather further north. But down here, in the southwest, it's just nice and warm. And I hope you're having a wonderful day, guys. You know, with that video I did yesterday, which I thought was mind blowing. And I made that comparison before, but that's one of these um, avenues of speaking and thinking that accentuates something to me that seems completely amazing. And I am always amazed that no one's ever noticed it before. I don't think anyone's ever said it or noticed it before. That Germany had all these projects, operations, and programs. And then all of a sudden, World War II comes along, they go away. And all the projects and programs and operations come to the United States with Project Paperclip. And nobody seems to really understand or grasp how ridiculous that sounds. Nobody pays much attention. I mean, just the idea that we have a intelligence bureau like the FBI, CIA, or whatever that we seem to think, well, that's just fine. Yeah, there's one in Israel, there's one in Britain, there's one in Russia, probably other places that are intelligence agencies that are doing mind experiments on the people. And they have operations called Operation Chaos, MK Ultra Mind Control. We actually have knowledge. We know that they made diseases and gave people some chemical LSD that destroyed their minds and instituted and instigated riots and we know that they've been bringing drugs across the border for 100 years, I guess, I don't know, a long time. There's been this influx of drugs and nobody seems to ever realize, wait a minute, they're not really trying to get rid of them. They're using it as a way to destroy our minds and keep us in control. And in order to keep police on the streets, you've got to have crime, got to have crazy people, you got to have bad things going on so that everybody's in total nightmare in their consciousness. They don't have they're too weak to complain. They're too scared. They're dying. Get the whole world to just basically be dying. One half of the world's dying and they can't say anything because they're dying. The other half of the world is gotten all these luxuries, living in penthouses, and they don't even like their life, but they got to keep going because if they lose the penthouse or the luxury car or all that, they lose this pretty girl that they've got. I guess they're buying this woman, right? Because it ain't marriage. It ain't a soulmate that says, hey, let's go through life and build a life together. Like, let's build a cabin along a nice little beautiful stream and watch the little deer come down and drink from the brook, raise children. We don't do that anymore. There are no little houses on the prairie anymore. And so, as the Jewish individual we call Elvis, who I guess is the most famous individual right behind, I guess James Dean and Marilyn Monroe, all of them which were Jews, Doris Day, all the people that were in the past that were icons. We've got paintings, Einstein, every school, every library's got a picture of Einstein or Darwin or Freud on their, all these individuals are Jewish. And this icon, this what they call an idol, right? You worship idols, don't you? They're stars. We worship stars. They're gods, right? And all of this one family, we're all just, throw our panties up there. And Elvis would say, we're caught in a trap. I can't walk out because I love you too much, baby. Why can't you see what you're doing to me when you don't believe a word I say? We can't go on together with suspicious minds. We can't build our dreams on suspicious minds. Ooh, take it that much. Yeah, baby. Oh, wow. That is apropos. It is exactly capturing the point I'm trying to make here. That we got some suspicious minds. At least I do. But the odd thing is, no one else seems to. People just go along, act like it's all just normal. That we're basically groveling at the foot of this particular people that has all the money. And we think that's just normal. That's why it's capitalism, Dave. Of course, they can have all the money in the world. That's just despair, right? Because it's capitalism. So they get to be the ruler over you. Oh, by the way, they got a book. Okay, it's their book. And in their book, they say they're in charge of us. And we're just wood choppers and water carriers. Get used to it. Don't you know they're the chosen ones? Oh my goodness, Ben. We're just like, oh, well, yeah, that's what I was taught in Sunday school. Because obviously, we're just all pieces of crap. You were born unworthy of life. You're a sinner. So now think about this. If you will accept that you are a piece of crap, do what you're told, and never try to enjoy your life. Because, first of all, we've told you what you're supposed to feel, how you're supposed to think, and what is proper for you to enjoy. Don't be doing any of these things that we say you're not supposed to do. Of course, it don't matter anyway, because you're not the chosen people. So you don't get to have immortality. Right? So you don't get anything because you were born a disgusting sinner. And even if you do everything we say, you're still not the chosen, right? So if you want to be a slave, maybe, might be able to let you live. Although you might need some medications so that you'll go into your little house and sit on your bed with a bottle of whiskey. We provide it for you, right? Now, of course, we tell you that that's going to kill you. We got bars on every corner of every street. We got liquor stores. We got big factories manufacturing all of this. In fact, hey, we got some really good stuff coming over the border. Now, you're going to be believing in all this because we're brainwashing you, propaganda, all of this stuff. You know, your sacred book, half of it says that we're the chosen, right? The other half says you should love one another and everybody's equal. But, you know, it depends on what you're thinking in your mind, because we got split personalities. We made y'all schizophrenic. So we told you the truth because we had to. Darn it, Jesus made us do that. But at the same time, we want you to continue to believe that you're pieces of crap, and it's okay for the chosen people to be involved in satanic worship. Did you see somebody murdering or sacrificing somebody down there at the cremation of care ceremony? Well, you know what? We're going to make it scary. You'll hear people screaming, and you'll never know for sure, but probably we're sacrificing humans, right, to the devil. We don't need to get the police involved. We don't need, to have an investigation done as to what these leaders of ours might be doing down there under the big redwood trees. We saw some pretty interesting pictures and maybe some screams and even some clown that works for the CIA that pretended to go in there and get all the lowdown, right? But then it's never because we're trying to find out what they did wrong and they're going to have to stop doing these bad things. But it's always just some kind of a soap opera. Dun, 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 dun. On Capitol Hill today, 45 people were murdered, several of them raped, and Congress just passed a bill that gave all of the Senate and the House a 300% raise. We're canceling food stamps. We're canceling vouchers for housing. We originally gave you a bus ride in and told you that we'd pay for everything and you could be held up into a motel. But now, sorry, we just got a new president and now we got to kill you. All right? Yeah. You know what? You shouldn't have listened to Biden. You idiot. What? You went and got that thing cut off? Why did you believe 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all of this propaganda that was going out from the other side of the aisle in Congress telling you that all children should be immediately transgenderized from the day that you were born? Now, we got a new president, and the Secretary of Health has decided to change the dictionary and the encyclopedia, where it used to say that people were possibly transgenders and that was something that they were born with. Now we've changed it. We've gotten some information, some new information from Capitol Hill and these big, ugly, old, nasty men up there that, are going by the side of the book that you don't like, it says we're the chosen. Well, we've decided to make it universal law that when people do that, they're going to be classified as zombies. And if you're a zombie, then you're a threat to the United States. And what this means is that we've got a lot of buses with bars and shackles that we're going to come into your town, round up all the people, because you're all zombies now. You stupid idiots. Listening to the prior administration's scientists and the consensus among the people. And of course, you got to believe scientists until we say you shouldn't believe them. On cue, right? It's like Simon says. Simon says, walk 3 steps. Okay, now walk left. Up! Simon didn't say walk left. Now we got to torture you and then murder you. Sorry. Because all of this balderdash ran night and day for like 2 decades, telling you how stupid you were if you didn't run right out and transgenderize yourself and your neighbor without his consent, right? You had to do it. It was something that everybody knew. It was a worldwide update on your program, and you accepted it, but now you're a fool because you shouldn't have done that. It's almost like one side, half the world, or the people in authority, half of them tell you, you should do this, that, and the other thing, and you got to do it, or you're going to jail, right? Intimidation. And then every 4 years, we get another party in that says, what? Are you kidding me? You should never have done that. That's evil, and you're evil for believing it. We're not going to arrest or get mad at the people that told you that. We're just going to take it out on you for believing it. Now we're going to give you some other stuff that you should probably not believe. But if you don't believe it for the next 4 years, you're going to jail and probably going to die. So, you are responsible no matter what else goes on in this world. It's you. You're responsible. You're responsible for everything that you ever heard that was put on the radio and the television nonstop, night and day, telling you that this was normal and this is what you were required to do, or we were going to take away your children. However, now we've got another administration and we've classified you as zombies and enemies of the state. So we got to round you up in buses with chains and shackles and take you to a facility where we will promptly torture you for the rest of your existence. I'm sorry, but we got to make America great again. Yep, they're murdering kids, and then they're claiming that, now we got to take away all your guns because, hey, we went and murdered your kids. So, look, you better get rid of your guns. By the way, we're still going to keep our guns. The police are still going to hold you at gunpoint on the corner, demanding that you get in some very uncomfortable chains, right? You may not have ever done anything in your life. We just walk up to you, grab you, shove you down, put our knee in your back, beat the crap out of your wife while you're standing there. You're not allowed to do anything. You can't defend her, right? Because we said that she might have had some smell on her breath. Maybe she's been drinking a little whiskey. Yeah, I know the last administration liked drunks and subsidized their drinking, but not anymore. Oh, I know you see on the television every diggity dang dong day that these other people are doing it all the time, right? And they don't go to jail. Our entire government, they're all embezzling money. They're all getting billionaire money, from something. They're all got information about the stock market before we do, and then they make billions. And then they have all these conflicts of interest. They are caught in affairs. Our presidents are married to women that aren't even women. They're really men dressed up like women. And now they want you to make sure that you tell your child when it's born, it might not be really a male or female. It could just be that the world is kind of screwed up. Maybe they want to be a pervert. Hey, that's their choice. Do you know there's no such thing as a pervert anymore? Oh, wait a minute. When you're in Sunday school, there is, and you're one of them. And that's why you're going to hell. But now over here, when it comes to the world, they're going to tell you be a bad person. Please. It's just, of course, it's normal. How dare you be a good person? But then over here, when you go into that seat and put that cone hat on, they tell you, well, you're bad now, see? Well, wait a minute. You talked me into it. What, 1,000 years of propaganda to make me numb? You told me that, well, Darwin told us that life is just an accident and there is no deity. But you see, we got to play musical chairs because on Sunday we go to church and we're told that we're going to burn forever in hell. Now that's going to stick with you a little bit, right? So therefore, you know for a fact that you're going to hell. But the people that we get down and grovel and worship, they are completely allowed to do whatever they want and live in luxury. They're never counseled about how much money they have. My goodness. After the first $47 billion, we just had to accept it, We just had to accept it. They're God and we're not, Right? We're the heathen. Where do we get these words? We're pagans. Oh my goodness, that sounds like a bad thing. And what do you do about that when you just can't? Well, there ain't nothing you can do about it because that's the way you was born. You ain't the chosen one. So step back, son. And look, we're going to pay you a living wage. Okay, what's that apartment cost? $3,000 a month. All righty, well, we'll pay you $2,900. Then you go down and stand in line all day and get you a voucher for that other 10%. Maybe get some canned foods. Of course, we put poison in that food. Ha! But that's all right, because that's all you got. And life is only meant to be lived once. So that's your lot in life. Like a little mouse, you go, see there, we give you a little wheel, go around the wheel there, get your exercise, and throw in a piece of cheese once in a while. Right? But don't you know we're saving you from that terrible world out there? It's terrible, right? You got to live in that cage where we give you all things you need. What more could you want? You got bells on the side of the cage, a little mirror to look into, and we're going to have this little box that's like a electroid that's got wires, and we'll hook them up to your brain. You'll love it. It excites certain pleasure centers in your brain. And oh man, it's so good. You only live about a week after you do that, of course. But man, does it feel good. And you don't have to go out and work for that cheese or nothing, right? Just sit in there. And now, of course, part of your duties is to never say anything about your environment or how crazy things are. Don't even think it, right? Just go along and act like everything is normal. Okay. But guys, I mean, I've had some strange thoughts in my head. Let me start with this one. I've been showing you guys that NASA or science or whatever it is, this world tells us. I guess they've been telling us this for a while. That the stars are light years away, hundreds of light years. That our galaxy is 200,000 light years across. That's farther than trillions and quadrillions. I mean, it's a number that you would go into the past. It's so far. If you tried to go the speed of light and get there, you would just end up right back where you started from because it's the speed of light, so don't even try to go. But between those bright lights out there that are so far out there, and we know what they are, what the composition of the gases, the elements, we know what kind of animals might be on some of the planets that may or may not be out there. And we know if that planet a trillion zillion light years away has water on it. And we've got a probe, flying around out there. How did it get out there? Did it have some kind of fuel? No, of course we use a solar panel to fuel it. Well, how hot or cold is it out there? Well, it's 500 degrees below zero, which would shatter the glass on any solar panel. And if it's facing any light, like a sun or something, or another star, that solar panel would reach temperatures of over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit and would melt. But somehow or another, we've gotten a probe through the wall of fire beyond Pluto that's 90,000 degrees. We took temperatures, we know. That would vaporize any known substance in the universe. But our little moped's still going. At the back end, it's got a little wind turbine or something, like a little fan. And that solar panel's keeping it going. And that's causing it to speed at half the speed of light. Now we're already past Pluto and we're going on to another galaxy. And it's all going to be propelled through a vacuum of space. Now, here's what I want you to know. A vacuum of space, the word vacuum is not a normal word that you would use in this context. Usually we'd use that word if we wanted to clean the house. But in this situation, it's a very technical term. Space is like a vacuum. All that's in that space has been vacuumed out. So it's a collapse of whatever space might be there. In other words, space is a word that means the distance between one thing and another. So if there isn't anything there, we still have space on Earth because we have air, which fills that space. So you take a balloon, you blow it up, or a vacuum bag, you blow it up, and now there's space in the bag. But if you suck all the air out of it, with a vacuum, there's no more space at all. The two sides of the balloon or the vacuum bag collapse, and there is no space. Now, if you tried to measure the distance between one side of the balloon and the other side of the balloon, if it was collapsed, you'd find out real quick that there was nothing there because there is no more space. So therefore, you can't have a vacuum of space. Now, nobody ever noticed that, but I guess they had to tell us. And I think what I'm trying to say is that even though they lied to us, they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to say this is the way it is. However, they can't lie to us. It's kind of like saying, look, I can say that all the food we make in America is not poison. It's good for you. I can say that. And I'm not lying. Even though what you're eating is poison. But if I say it's good for you, I'm not lying, and here's why. Because when I said it's good for you, I said that the food you eat is good for you. The only thing is you should have known that that's not food. Now, if you do eat food, it's good for you. And that's all I said. But if you eat that, which is not food, then you're going to die. And you should have known because, we sent you to school and taught you grammar, but you're not paying attention. We told you that it's light years across this endless vacuum of nothing. You should have realized that that's just a contradiction in terms. So this is why everything, somehow or another, they've gotten all of humans to believe in a tapestry of lies. And it's not like, oh, it made sense, so you can't blame us. Everything they tell us is a contradiction in terms. Let's say that I was going to teach you history. I'm going to teach you the history of this world. And I said, okay, listen up. Here's the story of this world. Once upon a time, Now, that sort of means who knows, right? Because it's at some point, once, upon some time. So we're not going to say when or where, but it sounds like it was a long time ago. So once upon a time, there was a giant who lived in the heavens. And there was a man that was on earth that was named Jack. Jack found a seed and planted it, and it grew into a long beanstalk. Jack climbed the beanstalk, and it went all the way to the clouds, and he got up there on top of the clouds. There was this great big castle. And he went into the castle and was messing around. He shouldn't have been there. It's not his castle. And he got to looking around, and he found a golden egg. Well, he thought, hey, it's a beautiful egg. I think I'll steal the egg. So he takes the egg and he starts hoofing it down the beanstalk. And about halfway down, he hears this, fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Is that Jack? Like Jacob? Is Jacob an Englishman? Well, that's what they want you to believe. Anyway, that's not part of the story. The story goes that Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. Here's the thing. That's a bedtime story for babies. It's just a poem. And little children believe it, and we're allowed to tell them stories about the Wicked Witch, how Hansel and Gretel was eaten when they went into the dark forest. You see, it's a moral thing to tell your children stories like that, because that way they'll be scared and they won't do things like go out in the middle of the night in the dark. Because we'll tell them there's wolves out there, and big bad wolves, and wolves that like to eat little children. And the reason we're allowed to do this fiendish, evil atrocity to our children is because it's just tradition. We tell them that Santa Claus is coming down the chimney, and he's going to bring toys for all the good girls and boys. And if you're not a good girl and a good boy, then you get nothing but a piece of coal in your stocking. Now, that's how we control the children. And it's perfectly okay because they're children, you see. Now, if you really want to know the truth, you've got to know the esoteric meaning of all of this beanstalk and Jack and his friend Jill. They were children. Maybe Jack and Jill was brothers and sisters. Or maybe Jack and Jill was married. But you see, that's not even important. We're not talking about a moral lesson here. We're talking about nonsense to keep you scared, and that's the only point that we're trying to make. And if you were paying any attention, you would have heard that Jack broke his crown. Now, your crown means that Jack was a king. Jack used to be a king. Now, Jack don't know why he's not a king anymore. Well, the reason why is he fell down. Now, why did he fall down? Well, he was climbing up a beanstalk. Fate gave him a beanstalk, right? He woke up and there was a bean seed under his pillow. And he thought, wow, what's this? And he threw it out the window. I'm like, he's not a bad person. He just got rid of the bean because he's like, I don't want a bean. He throws it out the window, and up grows this big stalk. Wasn't his fault. It was fate. And therefore, this is the reason why Jack deserves everything he got. including breaking his crown. Now, why in the fiddly diddly widdly did he go up the hill in the first place? Well, he was trying to get up the beanstalk, and his curiosity got him up there where he didn't belong, and he stole a golden egg. Never mind that eggs aren't made out of gold, and this is just a story. And Jack doesn't exist either. But it probably applies to you. You were thinking in your mind, you thought that was pretty nice, going up a beanstalk. See, already you're the culprit. All these concepts you trying to get out of this world and get free and try to be king, right? You're going to lose your dominion. You're going to lose your crown because you're a bad person from the time you were born. Well, you should have known that Jack is actually a real person. He's King Louis the 16th, and he was a direct male line descendant of the Capetian dynasty. The Capetian dynasty was founded by Hugh Capet. Now, but during the French Revolution, he was mockingly referred to as Citizen Louis Capet. Marie Antoinette, his wife, which would be Jill, by the way, Jill, in that old language, was Gillian, or in Latin, Julian. So Julius means joyous. And it came to be a term for a very sweet princess. Shall we say the princess that the great prince had to rescue? Well, evidently, they wanted you to know why Jack didn't have his crown anymore. Jack was a lineal descendant of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. The Capetian line goes back all the way to the Languedoc. And so the Huguenot persecution of these individuals was because they didn't want them around anymore. They infiltrated them, and the Illuminati was created to rob them of this knowledge. And they put it all down in little stories because they weren't allowed to just get rid of it. So they preserved the stories in poetry that makes no sense and no one knows the answers. It's a riddle. Riddle me this, Joker. See, Joker was always coming up with riddles, right? Riddles. Now, the Joker, that's the word Jack. So in your playing cards, you have a Joker and you have a Jack. But originally it was just one guy, Jack. And Jack is the same person, the lineal descendant of Jacob through King David and Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. So if you'd known this, you would understand that this is completely a true story. And it's trying to tell you why the lineal descendants of the great Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene, they had to go bye-bye. They don't have no crown no more. The world's got to be ruled by the devil now, because there was an apostasy and Jack fell down and broke his crown. And Jill, who was Marie Antoinette, Marie, get it? A descendant of Mary. Yeah, isn't that interesting how it always works out that way? Well, Marie Antoinette was of the House of Habsburg, Lorraine, related to the French Bourbons and other royal marriages. Direct lineage, just as her husband, Louis the 16th, Jack, goes right straight back to the royal line of King David and Jacob. And this is why he's called Jack. But why is she given the name Joyous? Right? Jill. Joy. Well, that's also a royal title. We don't know this today, but Julius Caesar had daughters named Julia or Julian. And these are royal names back to the royal bloodlines through Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, who also goes back to Hercules, which is Samson in the Bible, who was of the lineage of King David and of Dan. So, this is the royal bloodline that was transferred from the Judean bloodline all the way up to the Zerah line, which is Zoroaster, Zerah, the lineage of Judah, his son, and Esther, Queen Esther, the line of Ishtar, right? Mother Eve. Now, wait a minute. Why is this Zoroaster, which we've shown in other videos, is Daniel, who was of the tribe of Judah, and he goes up there and he's married. He got to have a priesthood. He got to get married. So he's the prime minister, or he becomes the head of the magic practicing priest, which is the king priest, Melchizedek. They got to have a wife. Rex Sacrorum's got to have a wife. So he marries Esther. Well, remember Queen Esther went up there already to Ahasuerus, to the line of the Persians. And so Esther is already there. Now, it just so happens her name is Esther, but she's also going back in a straight line to the Canaanite princess Ishtar and Astarte. Yes, this goes back to Neamah, and Neamah is Anna Ma, meaning the High Mother. And she's also the dragon mother, like Rahab, the high priestess. They call her a harlot, but she's Rahab, the dragon lady, the mother back to Tiamat, which is time and matter. And this is Cain and his line that gets through the flood in the Canaanite line, that Judah marries Tamar, the Canaanite high priestess, that Laban marries the Canaanite high priestess, a daughter of Esau, who married into the Canaanite line, and their descendants through Esau and Canaanites produced a woman named Sarah, and Sarah became the queen mother, and Abraham married 3 branches of that Canaanite line. One was Sarah through the line of the Canaanites and Esau, who had the birthright. One was Keturah, which is the Midianite priesthood that went from Abraham all the way down to the high priest Ruel, otherwise known as Jethro, and his daughter Zipporah, that married Moses. And so the Levitical priesthood was a continuation of the great high priesthood of the Midianites back to Abraham. And of course, it was all intermarried. The Midianites, the Egyptians, the Esau, Edomites, the Ishmaelites, all of them married the Canaanite high priestess line. And that's the seed of the woman that would bring forth the Messiah. So how did it get to Persia? Well, Daniel moved up there of the line of Judah, and he became the head of the magic practicing priests. One of the 3 wise men was named Belshazzar. Now, Bel is a deity, like Baal, Bel, the bull, and Shazar is the same as the Osiris or Azar, Lazarus, Cyrus, Ahasuerus. It's all said different, many mysterious ways, whether it's Midian or Persia or Chaldean or, Sumerian. It's all different spellings of the same word. And Esther originally goes back to Mother Eve, who goes and is thrown out of the garden. She's partaking of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. She's cursed. The Lord curses her, sends her away like Abraham sends Hagar away. And through this jungle and partaking of knowledge to become like deity, she attains unto wisdom and becomes known as Sophia. And all of her children, one by one, file down into this world. We're the angels who fell, just as Eve's sin was only because in order to live, we might die. We must die. And in order to become like deity, we had to have knowledge. And Jesus said, this means eternal life, taking in knowledge of you, the only true deity. Well, in other words, if we partake of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, we also get to partake of the tree of life. And that's why Yahweh knew that. And he said, hey, let's cast them out of the garden, because if they get into that garden, they're going to partake of the tree of life. It's inevitable. And then they will be like us and eternal. Well, we are going to get there, because this whole cherubim that spins all the way around is the 4 faces of the fixed signs of the zodiac. And it's a graduation. You start off as a brute beast, the Taurus. You go to the lion, which is the king of the jungle. Then you go to the eagle, which is the king of the air. And then you go to the man, the Aquarian man. and he is man, and he gets his crown and his white robe, and he graduates. And at the spring equinox, the Son of Man is raised up and begins to ascend into his Father's kingdom. So it really doesn't keep us from the tree of life, but it guards the way to the tree of life. And so you can enter if you know the password. You have to get a new name and a crown and a white robe. You got to get through the pearly gates, and Peter's the one standing there and make sure that only the people that should go in go in. And you got to graduate. You got to have a white robe to get into the wedding, right? Jesus said that if you don't have any white robe on, you don't get to go to the wedding. But he's given out free robes, right? Free, white, perfectly unspotted, unwrinkled robes, meaning that eternal life is free. It's just that we have to receive it. And that's the hard part, because most of us have been so deceived into believing that we're not worthy, because on the outside of the story, we've been lied to and we feel like we're not worthy. But the truth is that we are the children of the living deity, and we're heirs. And we get to go right straight in. He'll give us a white robe right at the gate. We just got to walk in. The problem is we're not really even smart enough, because we're still at this brute beast stage. Or maybe we've worked our way up to the king of the jungle, right? Or even as wise as an eagle, but we still haven't made it to the man, got our white robe and our crown. And therefore we can't enter in. But we will graduate and we will get in. So Belshazzar, he was a Babylonian king. So Daniel was taken to Persia and Babylon. And there was Nebuchadnezzar. Again, Azar on the end. They say it means king, but it doesn't really. It's a name. It's Osiris, who is the lineage of all the kings. So whether it's Xerxes or Ahasuerus or Cyrus, all those words, Belteshazzar, the czars, the Khazars, the Caesars, every royal bloodline in all the world is named from this word Azar or Osiris. So this Babylonian king, Belteshazzar or Belshazzar, also they named Daniel, they gave him a Babylonian name, and they named him Belshazzar. Isn't that weird? So why? Well, that wasn't his name. His name is Daniel, right? So that's a title. Bel is a deity, and it's the deity that we sometimes say Baal. Now, Elijah didn't like Baal, and he was trying to get rid of Baal worship. But you see, it literally means Baal, and in this case, they're calling him Marduk. In Babylon, Baal was Marduk, Bel and the dragon. That's a biblical book. So when the Bible uses the word Baal or Bel, it means a specific lineage of a king or a lord. So when Elijah was trying to get rid of Baal worship, he wasn't trying to get rid of some guy named Baal. And we don't like Baal, right? That deity. That's a bad deity. No, that particular king that probably had lineage back to Baal or Marduk, or depending on what nation you were in, you called him different things. If the word Baal or Bel or bull is a evil deity that is the devil or something, then Daniel wouldn't have allowed himself to be called Belshazzar, or the king. Let the king protect Bel, right? He was the protector of Bel, and that means he had a title as the prime minister. So he had the same title as that other Babylonian king, because Daniel was a king and he had the same title. And that title came down, and that's what we have today when we talk about Zoroastrianism. It was the religion? No, it was a kingdom, the Persian kingdom. And they had their temple and their priesthood, which was the high king priest. Belteshazzar. Daniel's called Belteshazzar because he's the priesthood now of Baal. I know the magic practicing priests all had the title that they were protecting Baal. Well, it didn't mean the evil deity Baal. it meant the Lord, the king. Just as Moloch means king, well, Baal means Lord or master or a great teacher. So it was the teacher of Esther. Now, remember, Queen Esther went to the Persians and the Medes up in that area, and she married Ahasuerus or Xerxes, you see, which is another word for this lineal king from Osiris that went into all the nations. It's the royal blood. Any king anywhere in the world has to come from Osiris. And even Moses had the title of Osiris when he was, according to Manetho, the Egyptian historian. So it just means the king. And Daniel was the king, and the right priesthood was the priesthood of Bel at that particular point, because Bel is the Canaanite priest king, and he married Esther. And that was the combination, just like we always have Judah marrying Tamar the Canaanite. So this is the high king priest line from Cain and through Seth that came down to rule the world. And so one of the three wise men was also named Belteshazzar. And Daniel himself was named Belshazzar. And the king of Babylon was Belshazzar. So this was a priesthood. Now, this means that this lineage or priesthood came from Daniel. And Daniel had the lineage of Pharez from Judah. So Daniel, being of the line of Perez, married the high priestess who was of the Canaanite order and merged the lines and then brought back the line of Zerah from Judah, and the breach was healed. You see, the Bible says that Judah had two twin kids, Perez and Zerah, and one of them had a little scarlet thread around his arm because he had come out first, but then he pulled it back in. The other one came out. So there was these two lines that would be fighting. Well, they had to be a breach because the prophecy says that they would heal the breach. So Zerah and Perez had to become one line, and they did in the Persian king line of the Zoroaster, Zerah and Ashtar, which is also coming down to us with words like Belteshazzar. But Zoroaster was the high king lineage from Queen Esther and from Zerah's line. Note how Zerah also sounds a lot like the priests like Eleazar, Lazarus. So it's a little bit like Osiris as well. Zerah, Osiris. Well, Judah named his one child Zerah, which is probably the way that they would say Osiris. So he was naming him after the royal bloodline from before his fathers. So Zerah and Osiris is also the same lineal descendant. So when you say Zerah and Esther, Zoroaster, you're talking about Ahasuerus or Xerxes or Osiris, who was married to Queen Esther. And so it's the line of Queen Esther and Ahasuerus and Daniel, who then took on that title, that king priesthood. And a lineage from Daniel came down. And I even have in my lineage, when you go back as far as you can go with the lineage, they usually give you a crescent and heraldry. And then if you're really lucky, you get a legend. And the Voses have a legend that says that we're from Belshazzar, one of the three wise men that saw Jesus and brought the incense and the myrrh and all of this and the frankincense. So Belshazzar was a lineal descendant from the Zoroastrian Magi priests, and the direct line back to King David and all the way back. So it's the high king line of Canaan and Jacob. So it's welding Jacob's line with the Canaanites, with the Israelites and the Canaanites. And therefore, when you see anyone with this title, you know that they're a high king married to a high Canaanite priestess. So even Jesus, who was also from the line of Perez, according to the lineage we have in the Bible, would have also have probably had some line back to Zerah as well, because that breach had been healed. And he married the Canaanite priestess, the Samaritan woman, the Canaanite woman that he met at the well, that would have been then from Canaan, right? That's why the wedding was at Canaan, because you usually have the wedding, at your wife's family's town. So Jesus went to Canaan and had the wedding. He was the bride at this wedding. He was the bridegroom. His mother was telling the governor of the feast what to do. And when you read that, you can say for certain that the wedding at Cana was the wedding between Mary Magdalene, who was Mary, a high priestess, that's the title, of the Magdala, or the tower, or the temple. And so she would have been a Canaanite high priestess from probably Heliopolis. So when Jesus and Mary Magdalene went to Marseille, France, or their descendants went there, they were the royal bloodline. And this is why the knights were supposed to protect the Holy Grail, or the holy blood, through the chalice, which is Mary. That was where the blood was, within her womb, and her children became the lineal descendants of Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene. So that's then how it gets to the story of Jack fell down and broke his crown. And so it's the truth, and yet it seems like such a crazy story. So you read in the Bible, in the Old Testament, about all these stories, and most of those stories are not true on the surface. And this is what the Apostle Paul tells us: the letter of the law killeth, brings death. We don't follow the letter of the law, the outward spell, but the esoteric meaning is the truth, and it's holy. And that is what they've hidden from all of us. They've gotten the whole world to just believe these nursery rhymes like we're children, and they are keeping us in ignorance. Now, yes, it shouldn't be given, like Jesus said, don't give your pearls before swine. However, Christians were supposed to preach the gospel, the good news. And those who wanted and who had ears to hear were then, without any question, brought in, and they were given the truth. They were given all the truth, if that's what they sought. You seek and you shall find. And by now, the whole world should have been enlightened, but the evil deities took it over, and this Aristotle began to tell the public about these things. And those people at that time, the masses of mankind, weren't ready for these great truths. And then there were bad people that came in and tried to stop this knowledge from getting out. And they ended up with the only ones having this knowledge, and they kept it from us and wouldn't let anybody know. And then they burned the libraries, and they got rid of the temples, and that ancient knowledge then was lost. That's called the apostasy, and the Bible talks about that. So now the people that are in charge and have all this information, they don't have the information. They're turning it upside down and backwards, and they really don't know the real truth. They're lost, and most of them are atheists. Now, you might say, well, Dave, what in the world? I thought Jesus was the end of the line. He's king. He reigns forever and ever. And why would we need a lineal line on earth of the line of David? Well, because remember, Jesus is the Messiah. And what was his job? To reign 1,000 years until he puts all things under his feet. And the last enemy that is to be put under his feet is death. We're about to come up onto that. This 1,000 years of his reign, where we reign in association with Christ. He gave us the talents. We were supposed to go out and feed the hungry and clothe the naked, and heal the sick, and do all of that, and let our light shine, and reign in his kingdom. When he returns, if we're bad stewards or unfaithful stewards, then we're going to lose and be beaten with a few stripes or many. But those who are faithful stewards, he shall say, come and inherit the kingdom with my Father. So then he hands over the kingdom back unto his father. Who is his father? Well, his father is King David. And of course, was just one of the many incarnations of Adam. Adam was his father, and Adam is going to reign forever and ever. And so one day, now the Bible's very clear, several times in Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and different places, it specifically tells us that David shall never want a man to sit upon the throne. And then, once this child delivers up the kingdom back to their father, then David's got to come back into the world. There has to be a line, because it says that David will always have a son that will sit upon his throne forever and ever. And eventually, the son that is born is King David himself all over again. Because you see, according to the Bible, and this is something that most people don't understand, King David was to reign forever and ever. It will be King David himself that will reign forever, not just for 1,000 years. Jesus is the Messiah. He only reigns 1,000 years and hands it back to his Father. So this is why it says, my Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I place thine enemies as a stool for thy feet. So he sits at the right hand of his Father until all enemies, even death, is brought to nothing. And then he hands the kingdom back unto King David, who will then come. And it's very clear that David will never have a want of anyone to sit upon his throne. It is David's throne, and he will come back and one day reign upon that throne. So this is why there is still a throne. And the Bible says in the book of Ezekiel, I will overturn it, overturn it, overturn it 3 times until he comes who has the legal right. And the throne of David went to Scotland and Ireland and then to Britain. It's been overturned 3 times. The next time it will be brought back to the place that it was intended to be. The throne will be upon Mount Zion again. It will be placed, a tender sprout or a lineage of that line will be placed on the mountains, plural, of Israel, in the extreme part beyond the North Pole. And there's either land beyond the North Pole, or it may be, if you flattened it all out, if you went north across the North Pole from where Amun-Ra, Solomon's temple, was, you would go right straight to North America. And so somehow that is going to end up being the throne upon Mount Zion that shall reign over all the earth, right? But none of this is going to be told to you. And therefore, somehow, it's just a story that we frighten our children with. You see how they switched it? The Bible, or the New Testament, well, the whole Bible, the Old Testament tells us a really good, proper story about how the devil deceived us all and how we agreed to marry this ogre. And then it tells us the story of how Jesus came and paid for all of that, got us out of that contract, and said, we're making a new contract and we're going to be free. And we're going to love one another and forgive one another. But for some reason, Christianity doesn't know that Judaism was never the truth. Because Moses brought the law, but Jesus brought the truth. And so therefore the law is not the truth. And therefore we should be following the truth. But they've hidden the truth from you by putting a spell on you. Now, a spell is when they write it down. The letter of the law is death. A spelling, or the spell, mesmerizes you, and you become deceived by the spell. So when they put it down in writing, you're done. Because if they don't teach you, you see, it means nothing. Remember when Philip was going along and somebody was reading in the book of Isaiah, and Philip says, do you know what you're reading? And he says, how could I know what I'm reading? Right? This is nonsense. Can you explain it to me? And Philip went over there, and because somebody was learned and learned from the Lord himself, he expounded all things in the scriptures. Even the disciples had to have everything taught to them from the beginning of time in the Old Testament and all the prophets, and how everything referred to Christ and how he was going to fulfill all of this in 2 of his comings, one of which is yet to come. But we're never told this. Now, why am I saying this in this video? Because there is no lies in this world. They are not allowed to lie. They're not allowed to kill you, but they can make you think that they could kill you at any time. They can't just come to your door and kill you. That's why that doesn't happen. You do see people that are shot somewhere just out of the blue. Those people die because they are drug pushers. They signed a contract with a mafia organization, some kind of a cartel. They're under oath. If you are in the religion of the Mormons and you become a priest, you have to make vows. They can then get rid of you. You literally take oaths that they can take you out. If you join the Masons, if you join any of these organizations, upper echelons of some other religions, most of the grunts in those religions don't know. But there are millions of people in the world that have taken oaths, and they're privy to information that they're not allowed to tell you. So what they do is they say, well, it's like children. We could tell them scary stories. They're not true, but the children believe it. We try to convince the children that Santa Claus is real, but Santa Claus isn't real. So the masses of human beings do not know that they're not allowed to lie to you. Santa Claus represents something, and all the stories represent something. But the surface meaning is designed to deceive you. So in the days of Rome, there were still the temples from Enoch, right? From the ancient Great Pyramid. Heliopolis had all these other places around the world where you could go to these temples and learn spiritual things and learn about the mysteries. And in those mysteries, they had all kinds of beautiful things and great understanding and wisdom that was taught to people. Okay, it was something that was given out for free. Life is a free gift. And when somebody's thirsty, you give them water. However, there were people that didn't want this information out to the world. So they hide it, they turned it upside down, and now they flash symbols. They don't want you to know. Now, in the days of Jesus, this was happening. This was the Pharisees that didn't want anybody to know the esoteric wisdom. They had the key to go into the kingdom of heaven, meaning they understood, they knew the truth. But they wouldn't go in. Neither would they allow anyone else to go in. And when Jesus passed away, they systematically went out and tried to murder everybody that knew the truth and stop them from telling the world. Now, it was really difficult for them to hide it from the people because the early Christians all had this information and they were meeting in the temples and up in Ephesus and Damascus and places where Paul went. There were individuals that were speaking in tongues and having visions and dreams and had all things common. They were happy people. They knew the mysteries. So what they did was by about 300 AD, they got rid of the flame. They got rid of the holy flame, which is something like you see at the Olympics. The flame's always burning. It's the flame of truth. It was the flame that was lit upon the 120 that were there at the day of Pentecost. And they then became known as priests, flamens. And the Vestal virgins were the female priestesses. And they would dance and sing and prophesy. And they had all things common. And they would eat a sacred food called the sacrament, which could give you eternal life. This means eternal life, taking in knowledge of you, the only true deity, and the one whom you sent forth, Jesus Christ. So they had to get rid of that knowledge. So they weren't allowed to not teach it. They weren't going to promote it. But people that loved the Lord promoted the truth. But then it was rewritten by scribes into parables so that it would be very difficult to understand what these truths are. So now we're looking at our history, and we see a guy named Alexander the Great that means the defender of man. Andrew means man, mankind. And Alex means the defender. So the defender of mankind was having a battle with Darius. Darius meant the power of the people, you see. Because way back then, this democracy, this power of the people, wanted to take hold. And Alexander the Great knew that if we put this pearl into the hands of people that didn't care about pearls, if they were pigs, they wouldn't care about pearls, and they would rend those pearls under your feet. So Alexander the Great told Aristotle not to reveal the deeper mysteries except to an initiate. But Aristotle went ahead and revealed it to people anyway. He wasn't supposed to. He started just telling everybody these mysteries. He did it in opposition to the higher priesthood, and they actually wanted to arrest him, and he was going to have to pay for that crime. But Aristotle actually, instead of taking hemlock like Socrates had done, because he was also arrested and they were going to exile him. Instead of being exiled, he chose death. But Aristotle did exile himself and fled. But both of them were being punished because you have to be very careful to preserve the truth in the mystery schools and only give it to the initiates. But by the time of Christ, it was something that everybody needed to learn. But Jesus told us that there would be an apostasy, that evil men would try to hide these truths from the rest of the world, because Jesus wanted the knowledge of the truth to go forth. It was the end of this age of law, and mankind was supposed to grow up. So now we were going to have to deal with the knowledge coming out, and there would be wars and all these troubles that we've had because the knowledge is out there and there's wicked men trying to keep it for themselves, and that's the problem that we're in. But yet, here's the thing. At some point, knowledge had to go forth and be increased. And then those who had the truth would then have to defend the truth, and there would be a battle at the end of time, the battle of knowledge and truth. Anyway, guys, oh, buddy, it's about an hour. We're over an hour. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there and get this uploaded. Man, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. You know the Lord loves you all. May His grace and His peace be with you, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.